The intention is the final goal for passengers of Lion Airlines.
So good to see everyone here. And without further ado, we're going to start. So once again, a warm welcome to everyone. I'm Sue and I'm your host for today. And before we kickstart, here are some housekeeping rules. Firstly is to kindly keep yourselves muted at all times when someone is speaking. But please feel free to leave your cameras on because we are very glad to see all of your faces here with us. And secondly is to leave any questions if you have down in the chat box and we will take them at the end of the session. Now, before we dive right in, allow me to pass the time to Pastor Elisha Satvinder, who is the co-founder of Dignity for Children, to share a few words with us this evening. Over to you, Pastor.
Hi, good afternoon. And I think my wife is here as well. She's, are you here, Ben? Still here?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so greetings from the both of us to all of you, the staff, and all the dear friends who are joining us. And especially to Kenny from the Green Camp. You know, it's going to be an amazing speaker today. And Anne, you know, another of our speaker, and Natalie, our homegrown speaker. And of course, an amazing moderator, good friend, Dr. Kathleen, who will definitely bring a different dimension to all that's going to happen today. Of course, I'm not going to take too much time, but not just bring you greetings from Katrina and me, but all the trustees as well. I think this is an amazing initiative taken by the team, Katrina and the team. You know, I was speaking today with the Chief Innovation Officer. It's the first time today I came across this title, Chief Innovation Officer of the Sunday Group's iLabs. And we were having a discussion about urban farming and just different things of what can happen today. And I said, okay, can I request that the rest of us mute ourselves? Okay, I'm going to stop for a while. Yeah, if those of us, yeah, we can mute ourselves, that'd be easier. Yeah, so I was telling you, met this, we had a conversation over the phone, Chief Innovation Officer. And one of the things we talked about was, we always talk about thinking out of the box, but we came to a conclusion, let's smash the box. Why even consider the box there, huh? So I want to leave one thought with you. We talk about innovation. Innovation is not just beyond the box. It's really stepping and pushing the boundaries. It's about adding value. It's about improving. It's about bringing significance to what has already been done. I think all of us are pushing the edge there, moving across, yeah? But I think there must be an added significance and value where change must be inspired by creativity. And I think the next generation, all of you 35 and below, I should say 40, huh? You guys helm that. Bring change inspired with creativity. And those of us who are older, not being afraid to release them and let them take their creative abilities and really shape an amazing future that we all long for. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. And I want to thank our speakers again and our moderator, Dr. Kathleen. And I think it's going to be an amazing, amazing time together. God bless you. And let's have an amazing, innovative time together. God bless you. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor. And I'm sure we're all excited for what's in store for us today. And in the next slide, we have our agenda for the day. If you would like, you can take a picture or a screenshot for your own reference. And without further ado, I will now pass the time over to Dr. Kathleen, our moderator and facilitator of our session today, whom we are also very glad to have here with us. So she's the Program Director of YTL, Director of Acumen Malaysia, and also a trustee at Dignity. So Dr. I'll now pass the time over to you to introduce our panelists.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Sue, for that introduction.
I must say, I am really excited to be here to listen and to learn from these incredible people that we have put together for you. And I had the privilege a few days ago to meet them and to chat to them. And I just know that they will be able to share incredible insights. Personally, I've always been interested in education. And as time has gone on, I have come to believe more and more that what Pastor Elisha spoke about, creativity, innovation, encouraging the child's curiosity, encouraging children to learn because they're curious and they want to learn, is so important. So today we have three of the people here who are at the forefront of this innovation. And so first, I'd like to introduce Tham, who is the founder of EdVenture and Sri Amas. Tham is the group CEO and founder of EdVenture Group with over 20 years experience in education. In 1995, Anne set off to make changes to the high school education curriculum after experiencing firsthand how a majority of school leavers lacked necessary skills that were vital for excellence on a global stage. By incorporating her innovative methods of engagement into full-fledged curricula, she was able to develop an educational experience that focuses on developing what we're all here to talk about today: creativity and confidence, both foundational skills for leadership and innovation. Anne was also a top 3 nominee for the EY Entrepreneur of the Year Women's category in 2015 and was named Woman of the Year in 2016 by Her World magazine. In September 2017, Anne was selected as an Endeavour Entrepreneur. So Anne, we really are looking forward to what you have to share with us today. And so I'll pass the time over to you.
Thank you very much, Datuk Kathleen. That was really, really kind. And you were very kind on my age as well, because I've been running the school for 25 years, but I'm going to have to add on another 10 years of having spent teaching in the colleges. So there you have it, roughly my age. Yeah? Yes, but thank you. You were talking about earlier, I think that a pastor was talking about, crushing the box. Actually, in order to get that little boy there, his name is Caden, okay, to be fascinated with learning, right? You literally have to throw away the box, right? We didn't even, we just tossed it all out. And then we worked on creating as much fascination as possible for children in order for them to learn. That's how it started for us. All right, so thank you. Now, the first thing, in order to, since I'm the first one to speak, I will kind of lay a little bit of a groundwork here as to what has gone off with our education in the next slide, yeah? Because at the crux of it, education is really, really old. Joey, I'm gonna need your help. Thank you, yeah. So at the crux of it, education is really, really old. And not only is it old, it's not keeping up with the real world. In fact, it doesn't sit inside the real world in most cases. Now, the problem that I'm sharing with you is not a Malaysian problem only. It is all over so many countries and continents around the world. We're talking about many Asian countries. People I met in Middle East said the same thing. In Africa said the same thing. Central America, South America, and even many European nations. All right. It is literally a global problem. Our kids are disengaged from learning, and there's been very, very little innovation over the past couple hundred years. There are pockets of schools here and there who are working on doing things differently, but in general, things have not changed for a very long time. So then the next thing I'm going to be talking about is actually the change that needs to happen. Okay, so bear in mind, kids that we are preparing for their future. And the only thing that we know of their future is that it is uncertain and it is constantly changing. So the question is, how in the world do you prepare the children today for their world tomorrow, knowing that the information they have in their textbooks are already obsolete the minute it got printed, right? So we were looking at the fact that the curriculum at its core must have the human essence to move forward. And the other is the entrepreneurial nature of children needs to be grown, because it's actually inherent in them very naturally. It just got beaten out the system, by the system actually. So it needs to be nurtured and grown. All right. So what we do to help people understand is the next slide. It shows you the comparison. The first thing we did was we looked at what how this came about. Was there was an investor that was an investment banker was talking to me, and he was telling me what they were looking for in the CEOs and founders that they were investing in. The minute I heard that, I was like, wow, this is really cool. Educators need to hear what you have to say. So after that, I came back and I started doing a bit of research, right? First and foremost, what you see, this list is what we train kids to do in education in general. All right. Then I started digging into what headhunting companies were looking for, right? For all the key positions like CEOs and group directors and, like even corporate international positions, right? And the second list came out. Okay. Yes. So there we go. And I saw like vision and passion. My goodness, schools kids are not, if they are too excited about things, they're told to sit down and keep quiet. So how do you grow passion when in school you're told to sit and not make too much noise? You see, because passion comes with a lot of energy, but the energy got beaten out of the kids for 11 years of schooling where they're supposed to keep quiet. Then if you look at somewhere further down the list, it says finely tuned intuition. No, still the second list, yeah? What you will see is that you're not supposed to have intuition. You have to know, you have to be 100% certain of your answers, right? So by the time the kids graduate, the intuition is not even encouraged. How do you master it further by finely tuning it? So that got me, I realized that there were reds that started to pop up because these were things not really encouraged in school because you're supposed to sit still and keep quiet, right? Then the third list came about because I was looking at what are the attributes of entrepreneurs? Okay, and this came from an article that talked about the 25 attributes of entrepreneurs. They interviewed 25 of them, right? And each one of them, they pulled out one of the attributes that is very predominant in entrepreneurs. And I realized that they were all red. They were not even encouraged in schools. Okay, so that really, really got me thinking. So, but because ACE, we have one of our schools, Mas, is the first entrepreneur school in the country, right? I have a bit of a challenge because whenever we want to grow entrepreneur mindsets and skills in the kids, there are many, many parents that says that, you know what, and it's not necessary yet, they can always go to college and learn. But what as an entrepreneur, I know that's not true. You have to undo you literally have to empty out what's in the mind in order to add new things in. And it's very, very difficult to do that, much more difficult. And so I asked the parents this: when you look at these attributes that you see under entrepreneurship and that what CEOs need to have, don't you want your kids to have those skills and abilities? Now, if they have that, it doesn't mean they have to be entrepreneurs. They can be anybody. All right. So, but when you have entrepreneurship in schools, it will help build these qualities in the young people before they finish high school. All right. Yeah. So then we started looking into our own education and what is it that we're doing that is making all this possible, right? And we realized we had stopped focusing on transferring knowledge. Okay, and schools need to change. They can no longer be focusing on transference of knowledge. Joey, next slide, please. Thank you. Yep. And what we were doing was we were focusing on the transference of behavior. You know how people talk about, having the ability to self-learn? Yeah, if you transfer the behavior, they will know how to self-learn. Knowledge can be gotten at our fingertips through Uncle Google and anything on the internet. All right. Now, then how do we do that? So the first thing was we are very, very strong in making sure, and we feel very strongly that the human component is key to the transference of behavior. All right. So what we did was we had our curriculum and we wrapped the human element around the curriculum. Because at the end of the day, I've not seen a bunch of kids together, like let's say if you put them naturally together, I've never seen them sit down, keep quiet, and they really, really don't do anything or not even talk to one another. It's just a little matter of time when they start to play with one another, and they're just noisy. They're really, really noisy. Okay, but that's how they learn and that's who they are. They're high-spirited, and human beings, we are random. We love fun, okay? And also, at the end of the day, we are human, okay? And unpredictable. So as an education system, every lesson, every subject, everything we do, this has to be front and center. Then the curriculum starts to make sense to the children. Then you will start to see the fascination because we are using this part of who we are in order to teach. Okay. Now then a little bit of who we are as in terms of what it is that we have done. All right, you will see it in the next slide here. Yes, please, it's not just students that you see. We have the teachers there as well. And one of my teachers there, he's a medical doctor. Another one, he is with biomedical sciences, you know. The principal is also there in a sumo outfit, just by the way. This is literally the energy, the spirit, and the fundamental human component of who we are. Okay, so now this Camp Caper, yes, we loved working on this. We created this game and it was launched in San Francisco in 2016. But it became the physical embodiment of what we do in our classes, which is, you know, the gamification that we were doing in the activities. Like, for instance, yes, we do have quizzes. Like my students, they have a biology quiz, but they're actually having a water fight for the biology quiz. We do things like doing Tai Chi moves in order to remember their respiratory system. I recently found out what my teachers did in the classes. The kids in year 5 were learning about condensation, but they were rapping. You know, they were doing a rap to go with it. So don't be surprised if you see kids doing hip hop to remember kinetic particle theory, for instance. So we really were working on getting the kids fascinated with learning and not just being pushed to do rote learning. Huge difference, huge difference. Okay. Then the other thing that we did then was to bring in entrepreneurship. Okay, so it is our practical education, because we felt that education has to be practical, and so we brought in entrepreneurship. What happens with entrepreneurship is all the things that the students are learning starts to make sense. You want them to present, you know, then oh, I have to be able to move people in order to maybe understand what it is I am trying to do, right? Or another kid will have to be, why is it that no one wants to work with me? Or is it maybe something I have to do with the way I talk to people? I might need to adjust that, you know? So that's about empathy right there. So we have a few stories here. The little girl Shailaja, she's 11 by the way, but at 7 years old, she started her little tea business with 300 ringgit. Today, she's only 11 years old and her turnover is 50,000 ringgit. All right, just to give you an idea of what they can do. But her purpose was very strong and very powerful. Her father had trouble sleeping at night. So she wanted to blend tea in order to help the father sleep at night. That was her purpose. Today, she even has her own little, her little CSR company called Little Hands, Big Heart. She's only 11, turning 12 this year. And Maya was doing handmade soaps, and Fatin had, she launched a book, you know, when she was just 11 years old when she was with us. Right now, she's graduated, so has Maya. All right. Now, the other thing is the education we find through entrepreneurship, it becomes very, very practical. Okay. Now, a couple of other things that we have done with our students. We collaborated with a streetwear designer. You will see the next picture. The next two pictures, sorry. Yeah, one more. Yeah, Michael Herrera. He's a streetwear designer from LA to the stars in America. You name it, Jennifer Lopez and Britney Spears and all that. So we had a really good opportunity to work with him, and he was teaching our students global fashion business. Actually, it's about global business, what it takes to run one. And he did it through the fashion business with our kids, and who designed, manufactured, they marketed, and they sold. All right. And right now he's also still collaborating with our kids. Yeah. And I have just another one slide left. We had a young entrepreneur X Factor competition for the children, and we had some of the students have gone on to compete in other competitions, and they are not from our school alone, they're from different schools, and they collaborated in order to go for another competition right there. Okay. Now, I just want to put things into perspective here, right? I know dignity is very big on enterprises and so on. Now, the sad thing is that in general, people feel that this is like a vocational thing. It's for those who cannot study. And honestly, that is not true. Dignity has taken on to work with people who basically do not have a lot to work with. Okay, I chose to work with kids who have a lot of resources. That's the only difference. But on both ends, it is really, really critical. So we work with kids with resources because we felt that they will be able to impact the communities and the societies around them with the resources that they have. And sooner or later, I'm going to be talking more with dignity so that our students and your students can collaborate together. And that is what the world should be moving forward. That's what I have. Thank you very much. And you will see the last little picture, the fascination of the children. This is real education. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne, for that amazing, too quick tour across what you do. I mean, we would have loved to be here to watch your videos. I've seen some of the incredible videos that you have on your website. You've got something, you have a TV channel, I think, in your school where you post incredible videos of children dancing and doing all the activities. And yeah, we're just so inspired by what kids can really do if you believe in them and if you give them that space. And next, we have our next speaker, Kenny Peavy, and he comes from a totally different place. You can see from the picture as well, he's in a very green environment, a place that probably we all rather be today rather than in a city. And Kenny is the head of curriculum and learning at the Green Camp Bali. So I think we've heard a lot about the Green School, and Green Camp is like a sister organization to the Green School. So born and raised in Georgia, USA, Kenny has been teaching and exploring Southeast Asia for over 20 years. Kenny loves getting people outdoors, playing and exploring so that they can discover a deep connection with nature while learning to respect and take care of the planet we all share. A tried and true educator, Kenny has taught science and led experiential education expeditions in the USA, Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, and Indonesia. And best of all, Kenny tells me that he was living in Bangsa, enjoying all our wonderful Malaysian food and giving his students here, he was a teacher in a school here, a wonderful experience. He's ridden a bamboo bicycle across Southeast Asia to raise awareness for sustainability and circumnavigated Phuket, Thailand in a kayak to teach people about marine conservation. He's passionate about issues in the region. He's also co-author of the National Science Teachers recommended book on environment education entitled As If the Earth Matters. So he has been awarded Volunteer of the Year by both the Georgia Adopt a Stream organization in the USA and the Malaysian Nature Society in Kuala Lumpur. So Kenny, we really look forward to what you have to share with us and to find out how exciting it is to be out in nature every day.
Okay, thank you. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Can everyone hear me? Is that okay? Do I have a thumbs up? Can people hear me now? Okay, okay, good. That's what I always do when I'm doing these Zoom meetings and lessons, just a quick sound check, just to make sure. I think what I want to do is tell you a couple of stories, a bit of a personal story, professional story. And I think what you'll find is that it's quite of a combination and blend of what I'm talking about and what I'm teaching and what I'm doing. And what I do really overlaps in my personal life as well as my professional life. I don't have control of the slideshow yet. There we go. So just to get a feel, how many people grew up playing outside? How many of you guys grew up outdoors, never allowed to come in the house? You can either give me a hands up or you can type something into the chat so I can see. But when I was growing up, I was not allowed in the house until dark. So I'm scrolling through, I'm seeing some people, yep. Yes, a lot of people are not allowed in the house. I think that's where it starts. And that's a big part of my philosophy. I think adventure and playing are the best ways to learn. And we quite often overlook how much learning takes place when you are playing. So I just wanted to start off with that to see, and it looks like quite a few people have grown up playing outdoors, but I think we've reached a turning point in the sense that a lot of people do not, and we are pretty disconnected from the natural world, especially if you live in urban areas. I lived in Kuala Lumpur for a while, for about 15 years. I've lived and traveled in Bangkok, Manila, Hong Kong, Jakarta, a lot of these big urban areas. And I know that playing outdoors is not easy to do. So that's the first big part of what drives my philosophy, is you have to be outside, you have to play. So that's part of my personal philosophy, but it overlaps with my professional philosophy. As a biology teacher and a science teacher, I think you have to get outside and see the things that you're studying and learning about. Textbooks are great, and I do believe in academic rigor, but even as much, if not more, I believe in hands-on experiential education. So at Green Camp, you can see our mission is hands-on nature-based learning adventures to inspire sustainable ways of living. And a quick explanation, Green Camp is a sister organization to Green School. Give me a hands up or a thumbs up if you've heard of Green School or Green Camp on your screen, or you can type it in the chat. Yep, I see some people. They have for sure. As you know, it's in Bali, Indonesia, and basically our entire campus is built from bamboo. It's an organic permaculture garden, and we have alternative ways of powering our campus with solar energy and a vortex in the river. So our mission is aligned with that. We want to get kids outdoors. You can see I quite often use the word adventure or play when I'm writing my descriptions. Next, you can see that we really do believe in the Sustainable Development Goals. So we incorporate these. You see these at our campus. They're everywhere. And once again, I do think there's a big overlap in our personal and professional lives when it comes to meeting these. And I'll hopefully be able to talk a bit about that at the end. But everything we do at Green Camp and Green School is aligned with these UN SDGs. And as soon as you walk on campus, you can see it and you can feel it. Now, part of our philosophy are these 4 pillars of learning, and we'll go through these really quickly. And then I'm hoping to just tell you some personal stories of things I've done in personal life and professional life, which I hope will inspire you. And I'm hoping you might go on a bit of a digital scavenger hunt to find some of these things. So our 4 pillars at the Green Camp are sustainability education, intercultural appreciation, personal and social development, and nature-based learning. And yes, Sue, thank you for saying that. Feel free to leave questions in the chat as we go. So sustainability education, when you walk onto our campus, everything is built out of bamboo, and you get the sense that it's very sustainable. From the buildings, from the gardens, from the grounds, the design of the architecture, everything is meant to flow and feel like it's a part of nature, not like it's an interruption of nature, but something that's actually part of it and is meant to be there, versus a lot of designs for schools, quite honestly, don't feel exactly organic. A lot of schools that I've been to feel very much like they're factories, or very square and very urban. But when you come to Green Camp and Green School, there's curved buildings, there's natural design, there's natural materials, so you feel it's organic from the very start. And that makes it much easier for us to actually build in sustainability education. Everything we do, from our meals to our water usage to our compost toilets, and basically from the time you arrive until the time you leave, you're meeting these goals. Whether you believe it or know it or not, it's built into the system. Intercultural appreciation. Now I find this really a big issue. I'm from America. My wife is from Jakarta. It's easy for me to appreciate various and different cultures. And I think Malaysia is a pretty multicultural place. I lived there for about 12 or 14 years, and I know the various cultures in Malaysia. So that one is a big part of what we do. Another one is personal and social development. I believe that it's very important to fail. That's a big part of my educational philosophy. You need to make mistakes, you need to fail, and you need to learn about yourself and your limits. As well as nature-based learning. Everything we do is outdoors, everything is surrounded by nature. And for us in Bali, that's quite easy to do. I know that for you guys in Kuala Lumpur, it's not quite as easy to do, but it still is very important. So I think I want to talk a little bit about some of these personal and professional things. And I was envisioning this as a bit of a conversation, so maybe people can type some questions and I can answer these as we go. But a couple of things that I've done personally and professionally, and I would like for you to maybe do a bit of Google searching. As we mentioned at the beginning, I did ride a bamboo bicycle across Southeast Asia. I'll type it in the chat. It was called Green Riders Asia. And you can look that up. And basically, me and a friend had an idea to actually walk the walk and not only talk the talk. So what we wanted to do was our very own service project as teachers to inspire students. So we came up with this idea of riding bicycles across Asia and making mini documentary films. There you go. Renee has found us. greenwriters.asia. And you can find us on YouTube, where we made quite a few documentaries of communities around Southeast Asia that are making a difference and doing things very sustainably. So on the YouTube channel, you'll see quite a few examples of local communities throughout Thailand, throughout Malaysia, throughout Singapore, and throughout Indonesia that have instituted sustainability into their communities. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm in a very busy place at the moment. There is a lot of background music, background noise. I apologize for that. Another thing that I've done, and it's not ready yet, but I'm just publishing a children's book on sustainable cities, and it's called The Box People. And that will come out sometime soon. And hopefully I'll have a Facebook and a website, and you can look up how a children's book can inspire kids to live sustainably. As we mentioned earlier, on another personal thing is me and a couple of guys kayaked around Phuket, and we basically highlighted the plastic pollutions in Thailand, and we tried to do sea turtle surveys and surveys for ghost nets. So once again, we were doing our own personal service projects to bring science and adventure to life, and to try to find out what local communities in Thailand were doing that were making a difference. So that's a couple of things that I've done personally. A little bit about what we do at Green School and Green Camp, and I see a couple of questions. How can we take Green School's philosophy on sustainability and implement it in classrooms everywhere? That's a great question, and basically there's quite a few answers. One is you as a teacher and your teachers and parents have to really live the philosophy. And that's what I found out at Green School. A lot of us do live the philosophy. We don't just teach it. We don't just have it in our curriculum, but we actually live it. And what I mean by that, I don't have air conditioning at my house. I don't have a water heater. We eat plant-based diet. We don't eat a lot of meat. I don't have a car. I have a motorbike. So I have a pretty low footprint and don't spend a lot of resources. In fact, you guys will probably be shocked. I think I spend about $20 or possibly about 80 or to 100 ringgit a month on electricity. So that's a very low consumption. Now, it might not be possible in Kuala Lumpur because the climate's different, but in Bali, we can do that. I don't have air conditioning, I just have fans. So that's what I mean by living it, is you have to live it. At the same time, it has to be built into your curriculum, and you have to get the kids outdoors and outside. You have to get them out of the classroom, whether that's on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a semester basis, a yearly basis, but as often as you can, you have to get them outside. Basically, another thing that I do believe in is, as the teachers, you have to do some sort of modeling of your behavior. So you have to do your own service learning projects, like we did with Green Riders and Green Paddlers. You have to write your articles, publish them in newspapers, or write your children's book, or eat a plant-based diet. Now, can you do all of those things? I don't think anyone is perfect, and I don't think anyone can do everything all the time. I don't think that's possible. But what I do think is that you can do as many of them as possible that are within your comfort zone, at the same time trying to expand your comfort zone. So I see a couple of more notes. How does a survey for sea turtles work? Well, when you're in a kayak, you paddle around and look for them. It's pretty simple. You kayak around the island, and if you see them, you make note where and when. You take some field notes, and you try to do a bit of a survey. Unfortunately, we didn't see that many. But like any scientific survey, you would have a field notebook. You would have the time, the date, the conditions, you know, the latitude and longitude where you are, what you saw it. You would try to record the behavior. If you're not a professional scientist, you probably wouldn't want to try to capture it. You would just want to observe it. So if that's how it worked for us, we just took notes where we saw sea turtles. Okay, so just a couple of more things. just in regards to green school, green camp, and personal and professional. I have a YouTube channel, and I think you can look for us at Green Camp. We have a YouTube channel. But what I've started doing with my own daughter is incorporating technology. And when I'm with her outside, we film things. We film lichen, we film mushrooms, we film insects, we film bats, we film snakes. And then we make our own short YouTube videos. And there's two purposes for that. One is it educates my daughter and it gets her excited about nature. The other one is I share it with other people and it's on YouTube, and you can look me up. It's called Learn Nature Secrets. And basically, I started that kind of on accident because I wanted to just teach my daughter about nature. But I found out it was kind of fun if we had our phones with us and we made short videos. And then the fun part is when I take her back home, we narrate it and she asks me questions, and she is learning how to make a video, how to narrate a video, and all those technical skills. But at the same time, I'm tricking her into learning biology and science and ecology at the same time. So I found that to be quite a fun thing that I've expanded to my personal and professional life. And we do very similar things at Green Camp as well. And one last thing I will say is yesterday for Earth Day, we had 450 kids from Jakarta Intercultural School. And we did 3 big lessons with them. We learned how to make organic natural dyes with plants. So we use beetroot, we use bunga telang, butterfly pea, we used turmeric, and we used pandan, and we made natural dyes. So that was one lesson we taught them. And then they basically learned the pros and cons of chemical dyes, organic dyes, and how to make their own dyes. The second lesson is we taught them how to make a bamboo structure. And of course, they were in Jakarta and we were in Bali. So they used satay sticks, and they learned how to build bamboo structures as a model. And they learned some of the pros and cons of the sustainable material for bamboo and how to use that as a material. And then the third one is we were doing vertical gardening, how to do a garden at your house and how to raise a garden using recycled materials. So they were using old water bottles, old tin cans, tissue rolls, and they planted gardens in their house. And of course, they're in a very urban area in Jakarta. And so for them, that was quite interesting for them to see that they could actually do some organic gardening at home. Now, I think that is about all of my time, but I'll see if there's any other questions before I pass it on. Okay, I think that's it for now, but I think we do have some questions in a little while, yes?
Thank you so much, Kenny. We'll take more questions from the floor later on.
Okay, great.
Thank you. So Kenny, I just want to ask as well, what did we do wrong in Malaysia to lose you to Bali?
Oh.
We had you here for quite some time, and regrettably, you are now an asset to a school in Bali. And I love your enthusiasm for play and adventure. And if that is not catchy to the kids, and making them full of kind of hunger to learn, if they have play and adventure, I don't know what would be a better way of teaching. So thank you.
Yes, exactly.
And I love the fact that Natalie's question to you was, how do you do a survey of turtles? And you just said, just go and do it, right? Just go and find those turtles and just
Exactly.
The only thing you didn't say was just ask them the question.
Philosophy is just get outside and do it and fail, and then learn what not to do.
Yeah.
That's a big part of what I teach and what I believe in.
Thank you so much, Kenny. So
Thank you.
next up, we have Dignity's very own Natalie Tham. And well, I suppose, you know, for most of us who are at this forum, we know about Dignity, but Natalie is the head of enterprises at Dignity, and she's been with Dignity since 2014 and is part of the project and education innovation team at the CEO's office. So whilst most of you will know about Dignity, in case there's some people here attending the forum who have not been exposed to the wonderful work that Dignity does, it is today, Dignity is the largest and most comprehensive one-stop learning center for the poor and marginalized in Kuala Lumpur. It serves about 1,700 children annually, and they're aged from 3 to 19 years and from 20 different nationalities with diverse backgrounds. Dignity believes that holistic education and care is essential to break the cycle of poverty. And they were the real innovators. I mean, Pat and Pastor started the first Montessori preschool for the poor in Southeast Asia. And today it has combined skills training programs, entrepreneurship courses, internship placements for students. Dignity for Children Foundation operates several transformational enterprises, of which Natalie is the head. And this includes a cafe, an amazing cafe, really delicious food. I love the cake, hair salon, sewing studio, bakery, and several urban land and rooftop gardens as training platforms for the youth. So Natalie, welcome, and I'll hand over the floor to you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Kathleen. I'm just making sure that everyone can see my slides and can hear me. All good? Great. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much, Anne and Kenny, for the amazing sharing of what you and your teams are doing. When we were planning for this event, I went to Petrina. I was like, "Hey, Petrina, you're slotted to speak," and she said, "No, I'm not speaking. You're speaking." I said, "Why am I speaking? You're the boss." But I guess, well, for both Pastor and Petrina, they reminded me that part of the ethos of Dignity is always to encourage, well, the next generation or your team to also step up and share the story. So I'm just really pleased to be able to share our journey with you today. So I'll begin. So I just want to ask you guys, what comes to mind when you think of innovation? It seems a bit like an overused word. When we think of innovation, maybe you think of connections, you think of all the possibilities of the future, you think of cryptocurrency, digital platforms, and all this stuff. And if I asked what you thought of innovation in the classroom, you might say, okay, virtual classrooms, right? Everything at the touch of your fingertips. Maybe some of you might say, okay, innovation involves design thinking, and it looks like sitting in an air-conditioned room with a bunch of sticky notes and flowcharts, right? But today I'd like to actually present a different side to innovation in education. So allow me to share a story before I share about Dignity of another innovator. I'm not sure if any of you know this gentleman in this picture, surrounded by women. This is Professor Muhammad Yunus, otherwise known as the banker to the poor. He is an economics professor and was based in Chittagong University in Bangladesh. And when the 1974 famine hit, he realized that all of his economic theories were not doing any good to the millions of people who were actually starving right outside the university. So he was inspired to start what is now known as microcredit. He made a small loan of 27 USD to a small group of 42 families so they could start up their own businesses because banks would never take a chance on illiterate people and give them a loan. In fact, he was so successful that the Grameen Bank, or today known as the Village Bank, now is present in 97% of Bangladeshi villages, lifting thousands of people out of poverty. And the amazing thing about how he rethought banking and how he rethought working with the poor was that the change comes from the community. He was, it's not like a big bank from the outside coming and innovating and making their lives better. The majority of the people in this model are the women. Illiterate women are the loaners, are the borrowers. They're the ones starting the business. They're the ones making the difference. So I'd like to challenge that thought of that thinking of innovation, that it has to be all tech and, and actually suggest that maybe innovation actually involves listening to the village, being a part of it, and seeing their problems as opportunities to do something new. So today I want to share 5 stories of problems at Dignity that became opportunities for us to innovate and do something really different. I'm not sure if maybe even the Dignity staff, some of you may not have seen this picture. That is Patrina at the back. She is trying to get a child to listen to her, probably with not much success. When she first started in 1998 with her team, she tells this story to me, a handful of volunteers were running support classes with the squatter and the PPR children in Sentul. At that point, I was about 7 years old, so I wasn't there. I didn't start any of this. I was probably the same age as the child in that photograph. And Dignity really started as a response to the poverty in the community. Sentul back then, probably a little bit still now, was known as it's not a safe place. It's the gangsters there, it's drug usage. It was, and it still is, the poorest constituency in KL. And the children who were coming to the learning center were incredibly delayed. Some of them came without knowing basic alphabet and numbers. Some couldn't even spell their names. And many of them were coming from backgrounds where there is no rules at home about how to socialize, how to behave, how to follow rules. So can you imagine trying to start a school with kids of different ages, different learning abilities, not being able to focus? What do? Right? You think that let's get a couple of tables and chairs. We're going to sit down. We're going to make them focus. We're going to teach them from square one. But Dignity chose a different route. The team felt that we needed to totally rethink the way that we approach education, and making kids sit down. I think Anne mentioned it just now. Making them sit down wasn't really going to cut it. So Patrina came across Montessori, a method of teaching that's based around 5 key principles, which actually really resonates with both what Kenny and Anne were sharing. The first is respect for the child. We respect children by giving them freedom and choice, not limiting them and not overly directing what they should be learning. Second principle is the absorbent mind, that children are always learning from the world around them. They don't just learn when you tell them to. Thirdly, the principle of sensitive periods, that there are certain periods during which children are more ready to learn certain skills than others. And a good teacher is one who identifies sensitive periods and really provides the resources for children to learn and flourish during that time. The fourth and fifth are the prepared environment, that children learn best not when being directed by a teacher, but when they are in a beautiful and orderly environment that is prepared to enable them to do things for themselves. What they really need is independence, and for them to learn that they can do it. The last one is auto-education. It's the concept that children can teach themselves if we just let that happen. So our mission became to create learning spaces that would just shout excellence, where children could come to heal, they could come to learn, they could come to grow and self-direct. And the response was tremendous. It was working with these children who are coming so delayed. Children who were disruptive were now engaging. They were learning to socialize well, and they were really finding the confidence to learn and teach not just themselves, but to peer teach as well. And I think this is innovative, not just because Montessori is a different philosophy. I think it's also innovative because as NGOs, we often get asked, why do you spend so much money into making such a beautiful classroom? If you have this much budget, why don't you stretch it and reach more kids? But our approach was always that part of working with the poor is that they don't get any choice. If you're poor, you never get any choice. You get what people give you. You do what you're told to do. But we wanted to provide excellence, and to change that concept that you're an NGO, it needs to look like an NGO. No, why can't we look like an amazing school that I would enroll my own brother or my own sister in? So of course, if you want to build a world-class school, you need world-class teachers. And then we come up against another roadblock. Where are you going to find teachers that will teach all this Montessori thing and are sanggop to work with children from this background and, you know, and get it. Where are you going to get these teachers? Well, they're nowhere to be found. I believe the best teachers have to be trained. And so we train the teachers. Not we, when I say we, I don't mean me, definitely. I mean, you know, Patrina and the team and Pastor. So we started the teachers training program 3 times a year, intense training on how to use the materials. And we would have teachers from the community, refugee teachers, migrant teachers, teachers who the students themselves recognize as being one of their own. And in the past 10, 15 years, we've trained over 1,000 community teachers and helped to set up preschools in East Malaysia. And the amazing thing is, I remember the first time I was invited to a teacher training, my first year at Dignity. And I asked the colleagues, so what professional is coming to teach us? And I was told there are no professionals. We are the professionals. We will teach each other. And so peer sharing is so powerful for teachers. And has it worked? It has. We've had teachers come from other parts of ASEAN, including from Cambodia, Philippines, Myanmar. And we see teachers they come and they're inspired and they take what they see and they bring it back to their own communities. Like, this is a picture of a teacher who was working with kids in a railway, like in the areas by the railway tracks in Cambodia. And he brought Montessori back and he found it was working for the kids. So of course that wouldn't be the only barrier that we faced. There were so many other barriers to learning. There would be financial issues, parent issues, child marriages, so many issues that crop up as and when. And Dignity never, I think, had this great big plan to start a great big amazing school. It was more of meeting the needs one by one and thinking on the spot, okay, our education has to respond to these needs. If they're hungry, we're going to feed them. If they can't go to school, we'll find buses and ferry them to school. And if they need support in other ways, we will provide that too. So we also have mental health and counseling unit. Our welfare team looks into aid. We do health intervention and screening, and we also connect with the community to really hear what the problems are, because education cannot be in a bubble. We cannot pretend to know what the community needs without kind of hearing what they need from themselves. So these are just some pictures of our parent-teachers meetings. Every term, the teachers will be meeting with parents and also training them, running workshops with them on how to raise their children. Sports is a very big part of what we do. We run Faisal Cup. I know many of the teachers here, you have been conscripted. You are also a football coach. So we started the Faisal Cup 15 years ago to bring organized sport to the children. And sports has become not just sport, but so much more than that. It's a way of building peace, of helping children learn to connect across different races and cultures, and also breaking the norms. For many of the cultures, I mean, I think for myself as a Malaysian, I mean, not that I played sports growing up, but there was no stigma attached to playing sports, But for many of the communities we work with, if you're a female and you're wearing a pair of pants, and you're kicking a ball around the field, that's almost heretical, But for us, we were like, okay, how can we continue to help educate the community and change mindsets through all these different things? And this is where I was going to get to the heart of what I wanted to share, was secondary education that works. And this is what Anne so beautifully shared just now, about all the things that we know that our children need when they graduate, but we're not doing it. I mean, I went to SMK. I love my teachers, but if you ask me if I really got anything out of school, I don't really know what I tell you, because we were taught to the test. So then that question is, how are we making learning real? How are we making learning fun? And for Dignity, this happens in our enterprises, Normally in a community, you'll find that shops and schools operate independently of each other. The school is within a compound. Any impact that they're making is in the compound. The children are doing experiments in the compound, with the exception of Green School. But at Dignity, we wanted to blur that line and bring the shop into the classroom and the classroom to the shop. And so these small businesses, our enterprises, they serve the community, but they're also places where the youth train. They can explore, they can pick up a new skill, they can experiment. And like what Anne and Kenny mentioned, they can learn to fail. They can learn to fail in a safe environment as well. And they can reignite their interest in learning. I think there are just too many children who are bored and who are discouraged and who just really don't like school. And this is our answer to that. So in each enterprise, the students are learning from a teacher, but they're also working alongside the business manager, the chef, the tailor, the barista. So they're observing, but they're also participating in the business. They are engaging with customers. They're involved in fulfilling orders. They know what happens if an order doesn't get fulfilled. You know, they care for the shop, they clean it, they take ownership of their space. The business is their learning environment. So in the course of 2 to 3 years during their upper secondary time, any of our youth may learn 2 to 3 skills. And some people will say, is that really long enough to be good at any skill? But for us, I think the learning of the technical part of the skill is sometimes almost immaterial to the process of learning and the journey of learning in a community, of learning how to pick up something new. So by the time students at Dignity complete their education and go for their internship, they have multiple skills under their belt, both technical and soft skills. So we have our cafe, we have our sewing shop, we have our CutX Dignity, BigX, ArtX, and what happens actually when learning is grounded in reality? Well, first of all, learning a new skill demands focus and concentration, you know, especially when you are not the end user. So cooking a burger in a classroom is very different to cooking a burger when you know a customer is going to eat it in the end. And all these skills require humility to learn and to focus. There's also a shift from trying to memorize the right answer to problem solving. I remember there was one time in the cafe, it was such a small problem, but we had to figure it out. A customer sent back some nasi lemak with the comment that the rice is dry. And there was this huge meeting at the back. All the students like, the rice is dry, the rice is dry. Why is the rice dry? And we followed the recipe. Why is the rice still dry? And we figured out, okay, maybe we didn't close the lid. Maybe it took too long for the nasi lemak to go out and the rice becomes dry. Or maybe the nasi lemak was outside by the aircon and the aircon made the nasi lemak dry. But the point is, they had to figure it out. And all these random experiences, they make the learning experience different and make it exciting. They learn soft skills and teamwork. The back of the house, the kitchen, they have to work really well because customers don't scold the chefs. They talk to the waiters out front. And the waiters out front need to know how to send in the orders to the back so that the back can have sufficient time to prepare the dishes. There is real teamwork at stake. And if there's a problem, you can't really complain to the customer about it. You have to figure out a solution. So we find that learning in these real spaces, it's invaluable. Is it messy? It is. Is it challenging and maybe sometimes slightly stressful for the teachers? Yes, it totally is. Is it worth it? I think it is. They also get exposure to business principles, and learning really takes on a new meaning. You know, we learn to learn. So just some photographs of our kids in the different enterprises. I'm really happy to say that even right now in the cafe, I think 80% of the people manning the cafe are either youth or alumni under the age of 20. And in fact, one of our recent campaigns, Eat for Myanmar, it was conceptualized by an alumni and carried out by students. And that's what we want them to do, to realize that, you know, through business, we can make things, you know, happen. It's not just in a classroom. Just really briefly, I know that I only have a few more minutes left. Our rooftop gardens, we have 5 rooftops that have been converted into green spaces. And you know, the students are growing organic vegetables there. This is an example of the produce that comes from that. And I think just to add on about this whole shop school thing, right? When we first started, well, actually when we started, I remember as a new staff, I told my boss, Katrina, at that time, like, this is a really, really ambitious form of education, and it's really, really difficult. I think we should go slowly. But I remember her telling me that if you're gonna do something new, there's gonna be some pushback. It's not gonna be easy. But if it is easy, that probably tells you you're not taking enough risks. And so even with the rooftop gardens, it was whatever space we had, you know, and whatever resources we had. And it was really difficult at the beginning, but it's worth it. I'm just going to close with maybe a couple more programs. Another thing that we do at Dignity is our travel and learn program. So we don't just want to take them out and expose them to business. We want them to see what living away from their family lives like, what living in another community of people lives like. So for all of our secondary children, for 1 month in the year, they're leaving the house. They're going away and they're going to, you know, stay with their friends in either a campsite at our farm school now. These are pictures from the first travel and learn that happened 5 years ago. And they cook together, they clean together, they attend communication workshops, and they resolve conflict together. And again, these are real experiences that I don't think a pendidikan moral can teach on how to bertoleransi. You have to learn to get along. These are just more pictures of the children. And that kind of leads us to where we are today. Our farm school is just starting out in Bentong, Pahang. Our dream is to make the first natural farming school for the urban poor in Malaysia. And the reason why we're doing that is we really feel agriculture is so important. It's really the next big thing. We don't want just to teach kids how to live in the world. We want to teach them to maintain it, to take care of it. So our farm school is starting up, and in the last 3 months, we've had 90 kids there. In fact, I believe teachers are zooming in from Bentong right now. So you guys are like super awesome for lasting 2.5 months there. Sue is laughing because she knows she went there. 90 children there helping to set up the farm. They're doing all kinds of activities, cooking, cleaning, learning. And I'm just going to wrap up probably with a couple more slides. I love these two pictures. A boy learning to cook, and they're also learning where the food comes from. And I think even though it looks very raw, because the farm school is still very raw, but we're going to build it the same way we've built all our programs, which is we start with our hands, we start with the community, we steward the resources we have, and we just build. So we start with seeds. I think if you're innovating in education, everything new starts with something small. Most of the times you won't have one big, great plan, you know, with all your risk management in place. You have to start with an idea and exchanging ideas. And we have to be prepared that some of the ideas they're going to fail, and that's okay too. So this is really my last slide. So I'm hoping that for all of you educators and, you know, teachers and different ones who are tuning in today, that if you're working with children, that you may have the grit and the courage to try new things as you respond to the needs around you and build together with your children. And that you may have the wonder to try things that you've not tried before, to build something new with your community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you for taking us really through that wonderful retrospective of Dignity. You know, those images from the early days of Pat with the children, and Sentul in 1998. To Natalie, Sentul in 1998 might be a very long time, back in the old days. For some of us on this forum, maybe 1998 wasn't that long ago, and we can still remember it. But what a wonderful place and school that you have all at Dignity developed for the poor. Who would imagine that a school for the poor would have so many facilities, would have so many opportunities for trips, the children can go to museums, explore urban places, and now be in a school, in a farm. So congratulations, Dignity, and thank you, Natalie, for the part that you play in it. As for me, what I missed today by being on Zoom is not being in Dignity itself, because if I was there, Pastor Elisha would bring out his Punjabi tea, my absolute favorite butter cake, and that we could all sit around and makan together. So Zoom has its limitations. But now we will go into the time of Q&A. I know you have put your questions into the panel, but I will take advantage of the fact that I am moderator, so I can ask my questions first. So I'm going to go first, and then I'm going to pick out the questions that the audience has asked. So first up, I think is a question for Anne. You've talked about entrepreneurship, and I think you also mentioned that 2 of the children that you showed in your slides, they have now graduated. Can you tell us success stories? I think success stories, we love success stories and we love innovation. And so do you have stories of students who have graduated and who are now successful entrepreneurs? That's one question. And the other one is, what are the challenges if educators want to start an entrepreneurship program in their schools? And given that I think a lot of educators are here today, I think we'd love to hear from you about that.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dr. Kathleen. Yeah, it's been amazing listening to both Kenny and Natalie, and even your part in working with Pastor Alicia and Katrina. Right, it's amazing. So, and I'm really blown away by how much you're accomplished with so few resources. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing about stories about our students, I didn't start doing entrepreneurship with the school. I started about 20 over years ago when I realized suddenly as a teacher I was running a business, and and then I started reading more about what it takes to run businesses, and I realized those things were not taught to students. So I started teaching financial education 20 years back. It was a 9-hour thing before my students graduated. And that was the point where I realized the impact was making, because none of my students nor teachers would allow me to stop teaching that. And it still goes on today for the those who are not in the entrepreneur school. Before they graduate, they all get their education before they leave. It's a mindset shift kind of thing. You see, the problem with entrepreneurship is I can answer the last question that the teachers wanted to know before I go to the second question. The issue with entrepreneurship is there is none in school, right? So as teachers, for us to figure out, you can't go out there and buy a curriculum, okay? So if you want to start, very often it is about picking out things from entrepreneurs. Well, I had my journey, so I was like 5 years in, but I wasn't a major entrepreneur or anything like that. I started my business from my house around my dining table. So 5 years down the road, yes, I had my classes in the shop, but that was on the first and second floor of a shop lot. So, it's not really anything big to shout out about, but the journey that I went through resonated when I read about it. And so I said, okay, let me start. So start with what you know or what you understand entrepreneurship to be, or if not entrepreneurship, then at least financial education, because you see, as teachers, the reason why we teach is because we know more than the kids. Okay, and that's a good point to start. And as parents and adults, we are already helping and teaching our own children. So that was what made me fearless about getting this started. So you just imagine over 20 years, a lot of my students, with even that 9 hours of financial ed, they made an impact. I had this one boy, he had difficulty learning in school because, if you don't fit into the mold of getting straight A's, you would have a problem. Schools are not going to say that you're fantastic, right? He joined us at about from 4. This was my first school in USJ1. Yeah, and that was not this nice big school in Dwi Emas that you see today, right? It's in a shop lot. We studied in a little kindergarten building. We were focusing more on the human component, and he loved coming to school. He was thriving there. But he loved cars, right? And most people are like, if you can't study, then you go to automotive engineering and you go and learn about to become a mechanic. But we were working with him to the point where he was so confident he could speak, and and what happened was he started while he was in the automotive college, and we encouraged him, go do cars. It wasn't like, because you can't study, you go there. No, you love it, you go there. So when he went there, he started buying old cars and fixing them. So while he was still studying, he sold 500 old cars. That is entrepreneurship right there. He was buying up old cars. He went to the Malay kampongs, to look for cars that people kind of abandoned, no longer in use, like the old Nissan Sunnies. Those who know what I'm talking about, that's Datsun 120Ys, the old, the old, what do you call it, VWs, Beetles and the vans and all that. So he would buy them for maybe a few cars for a couple of thousand ringgit, and he would fix them up and sell them. And it was more coming from the space of a win-win thing. The people who don't want cars for value, so he gave them value. He built and he refurbished them, and he sold them to all these uncle who had money. These are business people who had money, and he sold it to them. But the beauty of it all was he also gave away 4 cars and a motorbike to date. Gave away. And one of them was basically to people who couldn't afford to have cars, to own cars. And one of them he gave to the soup kitchen in KL. See, and then he would buy them in from Japan and sold them. So that is one of the stories that was really, really powerful. And he said, and you can tell people that, I'm terrible at math, but today I'm an automotive engineer.
Amazing. If only I knew him earlier. At one time in my life, much earlier on, I was looking for a Morris Minor. And so he didn't have to sell it to old uncles. He could sell it to this old auntie here too. Thank you so much, Anne. And I'm just going to now switch gears and go to Natalie. Natalie, you spoke about grit and courage and encouraging educators to just go for it, have the courage to do it. And over this past year, I think all of us have been under, there's been a lot of change, a lot of distress because of COVID. And in Dignity, it must have been the same. You have 1,700 children and they would not be able to go to school. And they're from poor, marginalized communities. You have a lot of refugee children. They would not have access to technology. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how Dignity dealt with that. How did you, with grit and courage, continue to educate these children and pull them together in those very difficult circumstances?
Thanks so much, Dr. Kathleen. Well, not just for Dignity, I think school teachers worldwide had a really hard time. I mean, digital learning is not easy, even if the child has a laptop and knows how to work it, right? But I think something that we realized right away was, first of all, we had to not just be a school, we had to make sure our kids had food on the table. Like there was no way we could continue lessons if our kids were not able to eat. So, within the first, and of course you would know that you were there for that as well. But within the first week of the MCO, our preschool had converted into a warehouse of canned food and dry food. And we were sending out bundles by the hundreds. And that was the first step, was making sure that the kids, they knew we were present for them. And I think the relationship part was very important because they need to know that the teachers are there. And then the second part, which was like, how did we, pivot, so to speak? Of course, we had to do learning online. We didn't have like one major strategy. All the teachers, and they were really, truly amazing. They were just trying to figure out what works best for the kids. We can't make them use Google Classrooms if half of them haven't even had a Gmail account yet. So, okay, fine. We'll do WhatsApp. We'll do Viber. We'll do whatever you have so we can reach you. So I think for the team, it was, first of all, staying connected, and then slowly across the process of the year, putting things together. And now there's a whole plethora of learning apps. But if you're, and that we're still on that journey of improving. I think one of the other things that we did was the community classrooms. So we realized that a lot of children, especially the young ones, they can't hack online learning. It's too much to ask for them to sit in front of a computer for so long. So with some funding from UNHCR, we started about 10 community classrooms where we trained women from the refugee community, from the local community, to open their homes in their flats and have kids come into their spaces. And then we would supply the learning materials to those little like satellite classrooms. So we realized we can't centralize everything. So our response, okay, we're gonna decentralize. And amazingly, in the pandemic period, we were expecting dropouts. We actually increased our enrollment to over 2,000 children during the pandemic period, because we thought, okay, we need to try something different. So I think, yeah, we just have to, keep trying new things, Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I know those community schools, I think, was such almost life-saving to the kids, right? That they were able to gather, and at least as well supporting the mothers supporting mothers and supporting their own community. And so maybe, I can ask this of all the speakers. Some of these ideas that you've come up with, are brilliant. And everybody would say, me too, I'd love to have a sustainable school. I'd love to have a farms, give my children the ability to go to a farm. I think, well, of course, Dignity is contrary in this, because the big question is financial, and Dignity is not a school that's well financially, not greatly financially endowed, but yet you do this. But maybe Kenny, is Kenny still here? Hi, Kenny. Yeah, and as well as, and some of the solutions that you've talked about today look like they require quite a lot of financial investment. Even Dignity's programs, right? Having a cafe, and the schools, a lot of schools will say, thanks, I like these ideas, they're greatly innovative, but I haven't got financial resources to make it sustainable. So maybe, you can share some quick ideas as to how to, the programs that you talk about, how they can become financially sustainable. And maybe we'll start with Kenny.
Sure. Yeah, first I have to apologize. I had to switch from my laptop to my phone. So I had some technical issues at the end. So I'm back, but I'm on my phone now. So apologies for that. I think we just have to think about how we define education. If you give me some kids and no equipment whatsoever, I can take them outside and teach them. That costs me nothing. I think we just have to rethink the infrastructure. I can take a bunch of kids and walk them down the street to a rice paddy and teach them ecology. So we don't really have to think of fancy buildings, fancy equipment, big labs. If we redefine what we mean by education, and we're not thinking that it's a big institutional endeavor, it can actually be quite cheap. Of course, you need the knowledge and you need the skills. And, for me, that journey was going to university and then moving overseas and learning about Malaysia, learning about Indonesia. And that did cost money, because I was traveling and it cost time, but it was also a learning adventure. And that's been my approach. So I think that's a first step, is redefining what a classroom is. You don't have to have a big building. You just have to have the willpower. And I think Natalie was really speaking to that. And I was really impressed with the passion I could hear from just wanting to get out and make a difference. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing, for example, at our school, like, we don't have air conditioning, we don't have water in our toilets. So we cut costs that way. Our toilets are composting, and we don't serve meat at the school. So that's cheaper. We serve a plant-based diet. So those are some of the pragmatic ways that you can save money. And then, of course, in the personal realm as well as the professional realm, I don't really buy new clothes. I get them sewn back. The shoes that I'm wearing today, I just had them repaired for like the 5th time, and they don't look nice. They don't look professional, but they're very functional. So I think if we could redefine what that means, I just had the watch band replaced on my watch, and I'm not the most fashionable guy. I don't have the nicest, latest clothes. But I think that's another way to do it, is to not require that of ourselves, not to have to need fashionable things that are brand new and that require us to throw away our old things. So a lot of the things that I have either been mended, recycled, reused, or hand-me-downs, given away. And I can use those for teaching. I can take, the tissue rolls that I would normally throw away and turn it into a garden. I can take, some of the old peelings from the beetroots or the buah naga, the dragon fruit that my daughter likes to eat, and we turn that into some science by making natural dyes. So I think it's not a new way of thinking, it's actually an old way of thinking. Before plastics and single-use plastics and disposable items were invented, right around the end of World War II, people reused everything because you didn't have a choice. You couldn't throw it away because you couldn't get a new one that easily, so you had to repair it. And that can go for anything in a classroom as well, from science equipment, textbooks, desks, a lot of these things that you would require to furnish at our school. Our whiteboards are actually the windshield from a car. So, you take the car window out, you paint it white, and then you can draw on it with erasable markers, and you don't have to buy something new. You actually reuse something. So there can be lots of creative ways to do that. And I think, like I said, for me, it's both personal and professional. So there's a lot of overlap in how I approach that.
Yeah, I think you're modeling, walking the talk. And that what you've just said is really redefining innovation as well, going back to basics, going back to what we used to do has become innovative. And I think we need to have that mindset to just not shut ourselves from, things that we used to do just because it doesn't look like it's the modern way, right?
Right.
And so, I'm sure you have a lot to comment about this because you have a very fancy school building. It's air conditioned, it's comfortable. The kids come from these backgrounds where they expect this. So what do you have to say in response?
Okay, I actually have a whole spectrum of students. Literally, I have the equivalent of a public transport, a Proton, a Mazda, and a Mercedes, literally, because I started from my dining table. So the point is, if people want to do something, it's about being resourceful. So I had very, very limited resources at that time. It was doing something because from teaching in the colleges, I was actually horrified by, the fact that you go through 11 years of education, there's so many things my students couldn't do when they came to me in the colleges, right? So I didn't want the same thing for my daughter. So I started this thing for my house. And all I had was 4,000 ringgit. Okay, so but it was about getting it going. So it was around my dining table that used to shake, and anyway, my students broke it because it shook too much. So we had to fix it. But the point is, it's about being resourceful. So if you have more resources, then you can do bigger things, right? But the point is that wherever you start, the end of it has to be a higher point than when you began. So with that 4,000 ringgit, I grew it took me 13 years to grow it. And I was like, how do I start a school with nothing? Just like I started my English classes with nothing, right? At that point in the English classes, I had about 3,000 plus to 4,000 students in about 14 branches around the Klang Valley. And I started with like 12 students from my house. So it's about starting, right? And being resourceful. So at about 13 years in, okay, I said I could spare 350,000 ringgit to set up a school. And we found a little kindergarten building in Subang. And we were like, yes, this is my school. My dream came true. I wanted to own a school, right? And that was what happened. And from there, we kept just rolling our whatever we made and kept rolling it forward and rolling it forward and rolling it forward. At that point, I brought in 8 people to help me. That was my 2 children, my niece, my sister, my friend, and 2 of my ex-students. So I'm in partnership with 2 of my ex-students at the age of 19, set up the company together with me and my daughters, and they all contributed. They worked their butt, They worked their heart out. They worked their heart out. And today we are partners. And that was 13 years back now. So what happened with that was, we're like, you know what? If 8 of us with this amount of money, we could grow to this. Just imagine now there are 250 of us, right? With all the resources, we had no track record, no credibility at that time as a school. And just imagine about 10 years ago, I signed a 2-tenancy agreement to take on the Sri Amas building and Dwi Amas building to the tune of, in total, 700,000 a year rental. I had 0 students at that time, 0 students. But we just, knew that it needed to change. So the belief together was just that, like, you know what, we had no plan B. There's no plan to fail. It was just like, you're
the real entrepreneur here, aren't you? That's what you teach your students, because that's what you are.
So it's like, yeah, die must do, that kind of thing, So, and so that's why I felt that entrepreneurship is really, really critical. It's about resources that you have. So right now, the way we teach our students, yes, my Dwi Amas, the students have a lot of resources. But when we started in that Corp 5 building, the parents there who joined us, and had very limited resources as well. But now we're growing, right? And yes, the students are having more and more resources. And what we want them to do is to learn how to have value now so that they can help pay for their own education. And when they graduate, when they have their own businesses, to provide jobs in the future. That is the mandate from us. Okay.
Yeah. Coming back to jobs and training. So Natalie, there's a question from the floor here. As how is creativity encouraged through the enterprises for students at Dignity?
How it's encouraged?
Yeah, how do you encourage creativity through your enterprises?
Right. Apart from the fact that problems just naturally crop up all the time when you're running a business, as Anne would know, right? You don't have to schedule those problems; they just come. I think we also, like our assessments, we schedule it, we make it like a project-based one. So for example, I'll just give you 2 examples. I think was it before the pandemic, our sewing class, their final assignment was an assignment that came because we were partnering with the Zero Waste Shop. And the Zero Waste Shop said, I want to design a better sanitary pad made out of cotton. And can you guys make it? And I was like, I don't have a template. So the final exam was these bunch of students made multiple samples of reusable sanitary pads. And one of them was a boy. And his design was the best. And it was really, really interesting. So they were there talking about it, and they couldn't be like, it couldn't be a taboo thing, because you have to discuss it. Oh, the material stretches this way. The button isn't long enough. I think white is not a good color because that doesn't wash so easy. So all these questions were cropping up as they were designing the product. And in the end, the store owner was the one who was giving the feedback. So, I mean, those are one of the examples. We try and include it, real examples from the business, and rope it into the actual work. Yeah.
Thanks, Natalie. And Kenny, so another question from the floor. Maybe this is something you can share quickly. There's a lot of curiosity around this. How can you share examples of nature-based learning? I think you mentioned some of it, but something kind of specific that people could take away. Is Kenny here?
That's right. Kenny drop off the line for.
Oh, okay. So if not, maybe I can take. Do we have time for more questions, or are we almost there, Sue?
Yes, we can take 1 to 2 more questions.
Okay. So Anne, again, how is playfulness, the human element that you talk about so much, made intentional in school so that creativity can flourish? Is it necessary? Is it necessarily a resource-heavy endeavor? Yeah, we talked about resources, but yeah, how do you make human element intentional?
Okay, thank you. I love that question. Yeah, for us, it was more about understanding children. You watch them in the natural environment, meaning that without adult interfering, you watch the way they learn and you watch the way they play, right? And then you also, and those of you who have children or nephews and friends' children, you know that at a very young age, they already pick up a lot of things. So the one thing that we don't ever do, this is something all of us can handle. Don't limit their learning. Because there's a tendency to say, oh, they're too young. So, they need to learn about cats, because dogs and cats, those are the words that they can handle. Look, children as young as 2 years old, they already know the names of dinosaurs. Full name, not T-Rex, right? They know Tyrannosaurus Rex. So you know that they don't think in terms of, oh, this is a difficult word and therefore I should know. They learn a lot, and therefore we just don't dumb that down. If you need to, don't just do A is for apple, right? No resources. When you're out shopping with them at the grocery store, talk to them about Royal Gala apple, right? There's Granny Smith, there's Fuji apple. So it doesn't limit to just apple. So what if they don't know how to spell Granny Smith, but they can learn the names of it? And the other thing about playfulness with kids is this, because we looked at the energy of the child, right? Because there's a tendency for people to want to suppress the energy. And when you do that, the kids, because they're scared of the energy of the child. We're not. We use it. So if you want a kid to learn how to read, right, instead of forcing them to sit down and learn, what I did was I made cards of the words, right? And we turn it into a game, and the game can be like jumping on the words as you call them out, or put a timer there. I'm going to call out the sentence, and then you go and look for each word and you bring it over, and I'm timing you, and so there are a lot of things, and the kids are running back and forth, they're jumping on the words. So that's a whole lot of energy. You're using their energy and you're redirecting them in order to learn with it, rather than suppressing it. And that's how it doesn't need a lot of money to do this. And that is I'm talking about the more academic things that a lot of parents want to know, like, okay, how do I teach my kids to read, for instance, if they're young ones. The older ones, one of the things we do is, if they don't really want to read at 4 or 5 years old, or even a little older, don't force them. Don't force them. If you nag at them, it's not going to work. But what can happen is, as a parent, the creativity, no money incurred, is to read to them in different voices, and if you know how, like some parents are very good at imitating all sorts of sounds and voices, right? Get your kid, as you read the story, get your son to make, a daughter to make what do you call the sound effects, for instance. That is how you get the engagement. And once they see reading as a fun time for mommy and daddy, with mommy and daddy, then that's how they get into reading without you having to force it. So these are things you can do outside of getting them interested in plants and animals and little worms in the ground. Yeah, those things you can do right in your garden itself. But the academic side is about doing things like this to get them engaged. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, I mean, that's also with Natalie. I mean, what Natalie was talking about Montessori and play and creativity. It's really very much, I think this is really the research that has been done over time, right? That the most successful strategies really involve the child and puts the child's needs and what the child is interested in right at the center. Natalie, do you have anything to add to this?
I used to think, well, when I was in university and I learned about Montessori, and it was in the same module as alternative education. It was Montessori, Waldorf, and homeschooling. And I lived in a flat with 3 people who went for homeschooling, and they were all slightly strange and weird. So in my mind, I thought all kids who go for alternative education come out a bit weird. But I was chatting to somebody this morning, and I found out that Jeff Bezos from Amazon, he was a Montessori child. And I thought, clearly there are some people who are benefiting from it. So I think that the choice to, use Montessori and, adopt the principles of letting the child lead, of trusting the child to be able to show us what they need. I think that's like the best decision, and I don't think Dignity could ever do it differently.
Yeah, trusting the child, right? So often we don't trust the child, and we impose what we think the child needs as opposed to listening to the child telling us what he needs. I think that's what you do so brilliantly, and what Pat has really set as a foundation for what you do at Dignity, listening to the child. So, Sue, how are we with time?
We can take another question if there is.
Yeah, does anybody else on the floor want to put up a question that I haven't seen? Or I can ask, why don't I ask Natalie the question I wanted to ask Kenny, because Dignity is doing nature-based learning too right now in the farm school. So can you share some examples of nature-based learning that Dignity is implementing right now?
I probably think my boss is smiling because she knows I have not been to the farm in this month.
I asked the wrong person.
Probably I'm not going to be able to answer this like amazingly. But I think I can see my colleagues at Dignity College. They're all there. They're smiling.
Should we get Pat to answer this?
Yeah, maybe that would be good. Let us get Petrina to answer this question. Auntie Pat?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I think we need to hear your voice in this forum, Pat.
Yes. Sorry, getting really, really dark and in the sun most of the time. Okay, can you ask again, please, Dr. Kathleen?
Yeah, can you share some examples of nature-based learning?
Oh yeah. With the kids, when they come to the farm, it's really a lot like what Nat say. It's very ad hoc problem. And one example was that the student complained the compost had smell. So sometimes we were given the problem like we were not being given a head start to get the problem. So suddenly a truck load of chicken poop will come to the farm. And we will have to deal with almost 25 gunny bags of chicken poop. And when it landed to us, we just had to deal with it. And dealing with it, you can say, but we don't have enough material to make compost, but we just have to do with whatever we have. So we have built the compost. This was like a month ago, but it will still have some smell. And normally we don't over direct with the kids. So we will say to a few of the students, I say to them, we have a problem. Do you agree that we have a problem? Then he said, yes, we have a problem. Then I said, okay, what should we do? Then they would say, okay, we move the compost. Oh, I say that's good. That's really good. Okay, where should we move it to? Then that's the big question, right? So together we will discuss and agree of a place that we will move the compost. And then I will say to him, what do we need to move the compost with? Then he got thinking, oh yeah, okay, we need, then he said, we need a shovel and we need a hoe. I say, what about gloves? Do you think, what about your safety, So I always directing them on the safety factor. And the boy came, I'm not sure that you can share that photo. So he's a big boy, very strong, very big, and very enthusiastically, he got a shovel and he went straight to the big pile of compost and start trying to pick it up from the bottom. Then he turned to me, teacher, so heavy, it won't move. I said, obviously, if you're trying to pick something heavy from the bottom, there's just no way you could. But I didn't say it. I was like, oh, really? Try again. And he did it again, and he just couldn't lift it up. Then we look at each other and say, I think we need to start from the top. So when he lifted up from the top, there's another problem, right? He came across another problem that is infested with maggots, like maggots, the fly have come and lay eggs and things like that. He looked at me and he said, we got another problem. And I said, oh yeah, okay, what do we do with the maggots? And it goes on like that all the time. So amazing.
And they learn.
Yeah, and they learn. After that, we have a very good working relationship now. He knows what I like, so he will always come to me, teacher. That's him trying to lift it up. And I said, can you do that again? Because I got to take a photo, So that's you can see that he's quite big, right? And it looks strong actually, but that's no way.
That's too big for him.
Yeah, it's too big. So yeah, that's what learning, and I'm also learning with them. It's not just them learning, right? So here we are, just like that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Pat. Oh, that picture was brilliant. And so I think we have come to the end of our time here, and it's been really, I think, thought-provoking. What we've heard today, from entrepreneurship to just being sustainable living your philosophy of life, how children just being able to do what they naturally want to do is the best way that they can learn. So thank you so much for all the panelists today who have given your insights and given us a lot of ideas, as well as to take away thoughts about how we can implement this innovative ways that we require to prepare our children for their future, right? It is no longer, whilst I love as well the fact that Kenny said we need to look back as well. It's not just to kind of say, oh, what are we doing just for the future? But maybe what we can learn from the past and how we did things in the past. We love to look at things with rose-tinted glasses, and we say, oh, back in the day, things were good. Teachers were wonderful. I mean, we have that lens, and yet we tend to just look at innovation as something new and not learning from the past. So thank you, all of you, for all the valuable insights today. And I'll hand this back to Sue.
Thank you, Dr. Kathleen, and really thank you for just being with us today and for also moderating the session as well. And also want to shout out to our 3 panelists, Anne, Kenny, and Nat, for your heartfelt sharing, and to ride on what Dr. Kathleen said for reminding us to really just see problems and failures as opportunities for improvement and innovations. And I'm sure all of us here today have gained much from today's session, and especially from our staff from Dignity who are tuning in, myself included, are very encouraged, inspired, and also eager to keep teaching and innovating together as a community. Well, we appreciate all of you for taking the time out to be with us here on a Friday evening, and wishing you a good weekend and a good rest as well. Thank you, and see you.